good? All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Again, my name is John Paris. I'm the chair of the Asian American Group's Endorsement Committee. On behalf of myself, our president, Mike Viswani, and our vice president, Kevin Fung, we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to come join us this afternoon. We've interviewed both of you on more than one occasion. Seated on the right-hand side of your screen for those watching at home is Ms. Gayle Nathan, and seated next to her is Mr. Sam Bateman. These are two of the candidates who are running for the Justice Court seat in the Township of Henderson. Under normal circumstances, I'd introduce AAG to you, but again, since you've heard that more than once, we'll dispense with that and we'll get right into the interview process. We'll start with Gayle and then rotate to Sam. Gayle, why have you decided to run for this particular race at this particular time?
Well, first of all, John, thank you for having this endorsement interview and making it so accessible to the American Asian Group. I think it's a great service to the community. As you know, I was a family court judge for 4 years. When I left the bench, I continued to do judicial work. I'm a short trial judge. I was appointed as a hearing officer for the Clark County School District, and I hear due process complaints. That's when there's a special ed child and the parents or the guardian has some issue with what's going on with their program, and so they file a complaint and it gets assigned to me. I'm appointed to hear the complaint. And I also beefed up my mediation skills and took some advanced classes, and I do some mediation work. So even after leaving the bench, I continued to work as a judge, and I really enjoy being a judge. In my 27 years of practice, I started out as a public defender. I was a public defender for 5 years, and I have always maintained a criminal practice in my private practice. I have experience as a Justice of the Peace pro tem in North Las Vegas. I was their probable cause judge for 5 years. Every Sunday I would look at the arrests. They'd be faxed to my home. I'd make a determination as to whether there was probable cause for the arrest and look at the bail. I also would be asked to sit from time to time for Judge Terrell, and I would call her calendar. So I have actual experience as a Justice of the Peace. I also have experience as a hearing master for child support court and sat in as a pro tem in that court for many years. So I bring all of this judicial experience with me. I enjoy being a judge. I enjoy helping my community in that judicial position. So that is why I filed for this position.
Thanks, Gayle. Sam.
Thanks. Again, I appreciate you creating this forum and the opportunity to come in and speak with you again. Sam Bateman, again, running for Henderson Justice Court. I have spent the majority of my career both as an attorney and as an elected official serving the population that in Clark County and specifically in Henderson. I've dedicated my legal career and my political career to protecting and serving the citizens of Henderson. And when this opportunity came up, I guess in part created it when I appointed Judge Rodney Burr, who was one of the highest rated judges in Clark County, to the municipal court position that was unfortunately vacated by Diana Hampton's death. At that time, I decided that this was the best way for me to essentially incorporate both the experience that I had protecting and serving the community as a 12-year chief deputy district attorney prosecuting criminals in Clark County, and as a 5-year Henderson City Councilman representing all of the residents of the city of Henderson. We run at large in Henderson. I run 2 campaigns in Henderson to the entire community. It's the same population that I'm representing now in the city of Henderson that represents the township of Henderson for the Justice of the Peace position. So I feel like this, at the end of the day, as a part of my legal career, the next step in my legal career is the best way for me to take all the experience I have in the courtroom. I've been in the courtroom for 12 years, almost every day, justice courts and district courts. I've tried 34 jury trials. I've tried 14 murder trials. I've represented the Nevada District Attorneys Association at the Nevada Legislature in 2 sessions. So I've really committed myself to public safety and public service, and again, my 5 years on the city council representing the residents of the city that I live in and that I love and that I'm raising my family. So I think that these, judges are an elected position, and my experience as an elected official and my prosecution experience in the courtroom is what makes me the best person for the job.
Sam, assuming you're elected, and obviously Gayle will give you a chance to answer the same question. Assuming you're elected, I mean, obviously with your experience in numerous courtrooms across the valley, there are inefficiencies. If you are elected, what do you think, A, what is the greatest inefficiency that you see in justice courts, specifically the Henderson Justice Court, and B, what do you plan on doing to try and tackle it?
I think inefficiencies come largely, I can tell you because I know the numbers. I mean, Justice Court is largely a felony prosecution court. There's not a lot of misdemeanors because they go to municipal court. I know the filings of the district attorney's office have not risen greatly over the last few years. So any inefficiencies that have been created, in my opinion, and I've been in front of almost every judge in Clark County, whether it's district court, justice court, or the like, it's really on the judge to have experience in the courtroom, in that particular courtroom, handling those particular cases, and have extensive, sophisticated criminal experience to be able to move those cases along appropriately. It's really on the judge to create those efficiencies. In my experience in the last 12 years, and I'm sure you've seen this too, John, judges are starting court later and later. Court time is taking longer and longer and longer. It's leaving less time for jury trials, bench trials, preliminary hearings. And there's probably a variety of reasons for that, but it's really on the judge to know the cases, the type of cases that are going to come in front of them, have experience handling those type of cases. In particular, I think with justice court, it's important that judges have experience both in justice court and district court. Justice court is the building blocks for a criminal case that moves on to district court. You need to know your place in the process. And so that's what I've been dedicated to doing for the last 12 years at the DA's office. Some minor tweaks I think we need to look at in Henderson, especially in the outlying courts, is I think we would need to start moving towards a lot of the status checks ought to be able to be done via email, and maybe not always have to have attorneys running around in person when there aren't contentious issues that have to take place in courtroom hearings. We as judges and the criminal justice system seem to always be tied to formality, and I think we need to move into a technology age, especially in these outlying courts, where people are running from North Las Vegas, Henderson, and allow them to make appearances either in video or via email where things aren't contested.
Gayle, you've been on both sides of the bench, both in front of and behind. What do you see as an inefficiency and how would you tackle it?
Well, first I want to say that when I was on the family court bench, I was usually the first one in the parking lot and one of the very last ones to leave the parking lot during my judicial time there. And that was because I wanted to run an efficient courtroom. I wanted to understand my calendar before I took the bench and not be flipping through the pages saying, oh, what's this case about? I mean, I was known by the attorneys as being a judge who had read the file and the history on the file before taking the bench on that case. And I'm very proud of that fact, that I was always well prepared for my cases. Inefficiency can come from the staff not knowing what the judge wants. So it's very much about communicating with staff, letting staff know what the judge expects of them, knowing and listening to the staff. How can this part of what we're doing work a little bit more efficiently? And I was very much a team player with my judicial staff, and we would sit down and go over some things, and if we needed to create a form to make something move a little bit more efficiently, then we'd create that form, and I would share it with the other judges in case they could use it as well. So communicating more efficiently is certainly helpful. I believe in starting my day when we're supposed to start the day and being familiar with that calendar and running the calendar. I agree with Sam, it's time to really bring the court into this century, this time. I love to tell this story about a trial I had that went over several days, and some of the witnesses lived in Iran. And both sides agreed that these witnesses were critical to their case. So I had a stipulation that they could testify by Skype from Iran with interpreters in my courtroom. Now, it's difficult to conceive of all of these complexities, but it was very complex. So we're ready, we have the interpreter, we have Skype set up, we push the button, we're dialing in, and it won't work. And it turns out the government would not allow Skype to go through. So it's like, okay, back to the drawing board, lose a whole judicial day of trial. So we go back to the drawing board and we find out which international video conferencing Iran allows, the government allows, which also means, of course, they were enjoying the trial, monitoring what was going on. So we managed to get through that way, and then the way the litigants were acting, I knew there was a problem with the interpretation, and I realized, I was told, that there's a northern dialect and a southern dialect. And so we had to adjourn to get an interpreter who understood the dialect that was being spoken in that particular case. So, but the point of this is we had witnesses in another country who were critical to our case, and so we worked it out and we had them testify by Skype. And that case is up on appeal at this point because it was very complicated with a lot of very complicated issues. But I heard the case and I rendered a decision in it. So I am all for video conferencing, being, letting those lawyers who are traveling around or, an hour's time away in another court, Skype in, FaceTime in, whatever is most convenient, even call in on a status check. Same thing with witnesses if we have them, if we have an agreement on both sides. And same thing with interpreters too, especially, with this community when we need an interpreter and maybe they're, an hour and a half away, we could set up a video conference to have them interpret if that is what both sides agreed to and, of course, if the litigant believes that it would be helpful to them. I think that in January, when the jurisdictional amount increases to $15,000, we're going to see an uptick in the number of cases, civil cases that are filed in the Justice Court. One of our most prominent attorneys recently posted on his LinkedIn that he's encouraging plaintiffs' lawyers to file in the Justice Court with these cases that are up to or under $15,000, however you want to view it, because then you completely avoid the ADR rules. You don't have to go to arbitration, you don't have to go to short trial, you can go right to a trial in Justice Court. So that's what a very prominent plaintiffs' counsel is recommending. And so I really see that when other plaintiffs' counsel join the wave on these small PI cases, we're going to really see an increase in the civil cases. I have experience in both civil and criminal. I've always maintained a criminal practice. I've had DUI cases, domestic violence, assault, battery, all kinds of criminal cases. I've tried criminal cases in the justice courts. So I'm certainly qualified to hear those cases. As a public defender, I had numerous jury trials. I was, in fact, the only undefeated public defender in the time in my office. The one case where I heard a guilty verdict went up on appeal, and that appellate court not only reversed the conviction, they threw the charges out completely. So it's a nice little piece of my history to have. The waiting time, I think I agree with Sam, really goes to the inefficiency of a court, and I've always worked with attorneys and all the other components that make up the court in trying to reduce their waiting time, and I would certainly be open and amenable to continue to do that.
Well, as you know, a judge's job isn't exactly a 9-to-5 gig, and there are numerous extrajudicial activities and other projects outside the courtroom. Assuming you are elected as JP, what other projects do you intend on championing? In what little spare time during the day that you may have?
Well, I'm really interested in seeing how the increase in civil filings goes and what needs to be done to manage that. Because if plaintiffs' attorneys really do see that as a more comfortable forum to file these small cases, the court could really see that increase. So I'd be interested in working with the administration in helping to make that a very smooth process. I'd also be looking at the diversion programs that we have and seeing how I can be helpful to that. I know we have a Veterans Court with Judge Stevens in Muni Court. I'd like to see how we could join with that or move that into Justice Court. I'm really not that familiar with it at this point, but I am a supporter of diversionary programs. I believe that they are extremely helpful to the community. I believe that they can take people out of their cycle, whether it's drugs or alcohol or even crime, if you get them before they're really enmeshed in the whole process. So I am a great fan of that, of those programs. When I was on the family court bench, I worked at creating a video called Putting Your Best Foot Forward, and that was for pro per litigants. In the family court, 60% of the filings are filed by people without lawyers. And I could see, as an attorney before I became a judge and then as a judge, that I don't want to say they clog the process, but they slow it down because the judge has to repeat the same things over and over again to the pro per litigant. And very often they walk into court without even a paper and a pen to write with. So I wrote the script, and then I asked 6 judges to read the script. And so altogether, we produced this video that's in English and in Spanish. It's on the Clark County Court website. It's on YouTube, and I have a Facebook page with it, on it. And it's been really helpful. Thousands of people have clicked on that link and viewed that video. And that was a year-long process. So when you ask what am I willing to do outside of my 9-to-5 judicial job, I'm willing to do a lot, and I have my history on the bench shows that. I also worked with Barbara Buckley and the Legal Aid Self-Help Center in revamping all of those forms. They all needed to be revamped, and so I took time out of my judicial day at the end of the day, before my day started, to review the forms, to circulate them among the other judges for their comments and their approval. And I met with the Self-Help Center for an hour or two every once a week for several months, so that we could get all of the forms, the major forms, completed, and we did that, and that was another project of mine that I was very happy to participate in.
Sam, specialty courts or extrajudicial?
And that's what I was going to ask you. Are you talking about activities that are associated with being a judge, or activities just generally in the community?
More so activities associated with you being a judge.
Right.
I know you like watching football, but as much as I would like to watch football, on Sundays as well, I'm more interested in from a professional standpoint.
I gotcha. First point, and you make a kind of a implied point about the 9-to-5 job. It's unfortunate, I think, across our justice court and district court that our judge positions have almost become looked at as part-time jobs or retirement jobs or whatever. They shouldn't be 9-to-5. There should be enough work in a day to justify the taxpayers' salaries for judges. And all too often, and I've seen this as an attorney, trying to track down a judge for warrants and other orders shortening time, and to try to walk down courtrooms, late in the afternoon. Sometimes it's not that easy to find folks. So I think it's incumbent upon the bar to start treating the bench, or demanding that the bench treat the bar and these jobs as a full-time job. That's just my soapbox. So I would be interested in being involved in, I know that there are judges that sit on there's an interim committee on the administration of justice. It's chaired by Justice Hardesty. I've been, when I was in Nevada, when I was a representative for the Nevada District Attorneys Association, I was involved in that process. In the interim between legislative sessions, they work on various criminal justice reform, criminal justice type bills, and issues. I did that from 2008 through 2011. They do need judicial participation on that particular group. Because of my background, I think that I would be a good person to have on that. There's also issues with regard to jail overcrowding. They have some kind of ad hoc committees that look into overcrowding issues and things of that nature. I would like to be a part of those committees as well, so that we make sure that we're operating when we're making public safety decisions off of true and accurate and comprehensive numbers and statistics, because I'm not always sure that we are, quite frankly. And so those are some of the areas in which I would like to focus. I think Henderson Justice Court has been kind of a quiet court for some time, not because the justices don't participate in the community in their own regards or in a personal capacity, but I think the Henderson Justice Court could have a little bit more public face. And I think having been a Henderson City Councilman for the last 5 years and knowing the community like I do, I think I could help create a little bit more of a public face for the Henderson Justice Court.
Next question, we'll start with Sam. While you take a swig.
It's water. It's water.
So's mine then. Every 2 years, the RJ releases its Judging the Judges article. And many people within the legal profession have criticized it for not being as accurate as it ought to be. However, many, for lack of better term, civilians, that's their only window into what the judiciary, quote unquote, really is, and what they're really like. What ideas do you have to try and make those kinds of ratings, in the RJ specifically, a more accurate representation of the judges and of the judiciary as a whole, since it does kind of leave a black eye on the judiciary overall when we see some of the numbers come out the way that they do.
It's interesting, I was reading in the paper the other day that Washoe County Bar Association does the exact same thing that the Review Journal does. I didn't know that. Paper didn't do it. The actual Bar Association does it. I think, and I thought this for a long time, whether we're talking about appointments or elections, I think the state bar needs to get involved in setting some standards. They're not requiring anything. They don't have the ability to prevent or stop someone from filing, short of legislation. But I think the state bar needs to get together and come up with some criteria for what people ought to look at in someone's background for a particular judicial position. We have judges on the bench who've never tried a jury trial case, and they're on the district court bench. That's the main function of a district court criminal judge. A district court civil judge is doing jury trials. And so when the state bar is I think, not getting involved, you end up luckily having people like the Review Journal at least putting out a survey to give the general public some idea of what attorneys think that are going in there. I know Terry Coffing's group over at Markey Arbach tried to put together a process. He has a website, I think it's called Educate, and he had judicial candidates coming through last cycle and put out at least a group of civil attorneys' thoughts about those particular judges. So, I mean, we're kind of in a position, I mean, whether you like it or you don't like it, we have elected judges, and it's, I think, incumbent upon the attorneys and the state bar to try to get some consensus as to what are the criteria, what makes a good judge, what background should they have, and then try to at least present information to the general public. As to the Review Journal, I know that, you know, there's outliers. I in my practice for the last 12 years, in coming to court every single day, and I pretty consistently 4 to 5 times a week in justice courts and district courts, I think those Review Journal ratings are generally accurate over a period of time. Any one year you could have something happen, a high profile case, maybe a new judge that needs to do some learn a little bit more about a particular area. But if you look at the Review Journal ratings over the course of 3 or 4 cycles, and I think they do them every 2 years, my experience is they're not perfect, but they give you a pretty good sense of where I think the judges actually are. If you look at Rodney Burr, who we're trying to replace that, he was consistently getting 95%. I mean, it can be done. I've been in front of him. He's probably my favorite judge that I've ever appeared in front of. He's courteous, he's on time, he knows his cases, he handles his courtroom well, and there's always winners and losers, as there are in every courtroom, but he still manages to get 95. Stu Bell managed to get 90. There's judges that manage to get in the 80s. So, and I think most of us can agree that they possess qualities that allow them to make those high numbers. So I think it's a combination of things.
Yeah.
Thank you. The RJ survey has a lot of issues from a statistical point of view. there's no weight given to, say, say, institutional bias against female judges. There's no veracity given to who is actually filling out the survey. We are relying upon lawyers saying, oh yes, I've been in front of this judge at least whatever it is, 5 or 10 times. But there's no follow-up to that. There's no one checks to see that the lawyers filling out those surveys have actually been in front of that judge 5 or 10 times. So especially in these election years when you have judges drawing candidates or judges or potential candidates who plan on filing against a judge, there is a lot of mischief that goes on with those judicial surveys. I agree with Sam that the bar should step in. I think we're at a critical juncture here with 52 district court judges between civil, criminal, and family. They must do something. They must step in and start helping this process instead of letting a survey that has no statistical validity whatsoever continue to destroy people, really. The Clark County Bar Association had been working with the RJ with this survey for many years, and they stopped, I want to say around 2005, but I'm not exactly sure about that. And they stopped because they didn't like the protocols that were being used in the survey, and they stopped partnering with the RJ with that survey. I think the state bar could set up a committee. It should be done by committee of both citizens as well as attorneys and judges, and on a volunteer basis. And the committee there could be a rating system, and we would not be inventing the wheel in this process, because there are other bars, state bars, that do the same thing. They rate the judicial candidates competent or not competent, or yes or no, thumbs up, thumbs down, or maybe just a thumbs up. You don't even have to do a thumbs down. The bar can just say, yes, we support this person's candidacy for judge. So I am all for that, and I had started a discussion about that when I was on the bench, and the bar president left the state bar. I didn't follow up with the new president because there was a little bit of reorganization, I think, going on there. So that's my answer to that question.
Well, did you want to ask a question, Mike? Or Kevin, you do? Okay, this will be our last question because we're right at our time frame.
Right there in regarding to the state bar and what have you. They are supposed to be an organization that handles take care of the attorneys. In what way that average people can go up against attorneys? Because I'm sorry to say, but a majority of the attorneys that I tell people are crooks.
Present company excluded, of course.
They charge, and they don't work. No.
Well,
we bump into multiple of them, little company, personal, what have you. Now, now that we have state, we have consumer affairs. There's better the business bureau, but the attorneys is no use.
well, the state bar has a very, very active discipline department. And every month we get a state bar journal, and it has a list of lawyers in it who have been subject to discipline with maybe just a private reprimand, a public reprimand, a suspension, or disbarment. And it saddens me to say that in the 20 plus years that I've been practicing here in Nevada, I am seeing a number of familiar names in that list as the years go by. And so if someone has given a lawyer money and the lawyer has not worked for that money, the first thing they should be doing is sending a letter to the state bar. This is what happened, and I want some justice. The state bar's process, from what I understand, is that first they send a letter to the lawyer. This is what your client or your former client has said. What's your response? And a lot of lawyers don't take the state bar seriously, and they ignore the letter. So that's a big problem, ignoring a letter from the state bar. And because that's evidence right there of some sort of negligence, you know, a lack of oversight to your law office. So I would encourage you, when you have your community coming to you and saying, lawyer A, B, or C took my money and didn't do any work, send that letter to the state bar, State Bar Council, and there might even be a form on the website. Maybe check their website for that kind of action. And you know, as we're talking about discipline, there's also the Judicial Discipline Commission that monitors our judges. And you know, we just saw a judge in North Las Vegas who stipulated to leave the bench. We've had other judges who have been subject to discipline and have been removed from the bench. Not just removed from the bench, they have been forbidden to ever run for office again. And so we have these systems in place, and I want our entire community to understand that these are serious commissions that are in place. They take their jobs very, very seriously, and when they have a complaint, they investigate that complaint. They have interviews, they send out letters, they send out forms, they want more information. Sometimes they want more information, sometimes they can figure out it's just somebody who didn't like the result, and so they're just doing whatever they can to wreak havoc after a bad result for them. But we have these systems in place, and I believe that the systems work, you know, to the best that people can make them work.
Sam?
I think the state bar needs to be more aggressive. I think we've seen folks get suspended and then have their licenses reinstated for commingling funds, stealing from their clients. I'm not gonna name any names, but it's happened and even been prosecuted, and they've been reinstated. I think it's hard to believe. And I think again, I hate to bring up the state bar, they were involved in it, and that's what ended up happening. Hopefully there are attorneys that are willing in the private sector to take on those cases, and because there probably isn't that many attorneys that are causing the problems, but they might be the same ones over and over and over again. And so hopefully there are attorneys in the community who are willing to take on those other attorneys. Sometimes that's uncomfortable, but it's necessary. And if you ever, you know, that's where I think they need we need to push the state bar to be more aggressive. Supreme Court ultimately also are the ones that ratify suspensions, disciplinary hearings, things like that. If they can overturn them, which has happened in the past, so that, you know, those are elected officials as well. And so if there are enough constituents that are being taken advantage of, that's also an area that the political process is one of the reasons. Oftentimes I say that electing judges isn't that bad of an idea, is that there is some public accountability, and even all the way up to the Supreme Court, who were looking at those types of disciplinary measures.
Well, we're a little bit above our allotted time, but we appreciate your patience.
Thank you.
We'd like to thank both of you for coming out today. We will be releasing our endorsements. It probably will not be until just right around the end of the month, in all honesty. We have interviews this weekend, then next weekend, and then the weekend after that of the 24th, we are having our, I think, 12th annual, 13th annual, 12th or 13th, I don't know how many years we've been doing it, our annual awards banquet.
Mm-hmm.
We do have some invitations here. And Mike has ordered me to inform you that ad space is still available in our ad book. He's the person to contact. We have all the information here. We'll give you some documentation for it. But again, we really appreciate you guys taking time out of your day, especially
Thanks very much, John.
all the stuff you have going on, Sam. But you as well, Gayle. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you